Penn State Wrestling Show here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, Greg Pickel. We promise we'll be back here during the offseason to discuss the latest news and notes when there are things to discuss. And there's a wide variety of things we're going to get to on today's show. Greg Pickel is going to do the heavy lifting, as always, to give you the things you need to know about Penn State Wrestling. So, Greg, welcome to the show. Appreciate you doing this here on a July Wednesday is when most people probably are watching this early on in the month. About as dead can get in the offseason, but still lots of stuff going on for Penn State Wrestling.
Yeah, hardly dead. An interesting offseason so far for Penn State. A lot more surrounding, I guess, the program, you could say, this offseason. And it goes back on the mat stuff. You had the transfer of Zach Ryder, the incoming transfer of Rocco Welsh, guys moving in and out at the same weight. There's been some off-mat stuff come up recently. There is on-the-mat success, which is a off-season staple for the Penn State Wrestling program when it comes time for the international freestyle events to kick off, and we're getting some scheduling news now. So, yeah, a little bit different of an off-season rhythm than we're used to in some aspects, very familiar in others, and we have a lot to cover on today's show.
Yeah, so just as a preamble to the start of the conversation, obviously we're going to be talking about Aaron Brooks and Carter Strach here on the show. We're not going to ignore those things, but Greg is a journalist, and by that I mean he is a responsible journalist. So when there are facts, he will report them, and he will talk about those things. When there are circumstantial conversations, we won't be getting into speculation and all those things. So apologize if you're here for the juicy deets and all that stuff, but we're going to be talking about Carter Strach. So if for people, I have a hard time imagining Penn State fans have not seen this information, but just take us through the Carter Strach situation and what we know as of now based on the reporting from the Collegian.
Yeah, Daily Collegian, I guess at this point, about 3 weeks ago, maybe two. I don't know, the calendar runs together here, especially when you combine the football recruiting dead period and the start of commitment season. But it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, a report came out from the Daily Collegian citing some former teammates, Bo Bartlett being one of them, some unnamed female students at Penn State making allegations against Carter Strach. At this point, like you said, T. Frank, a moment ago, no new reporting to add or corroborate or anything along those lines of that story. You can't do a Penn State Wrestling show right now and not bring the topic up. It would just be, I would think most viewers would laugh at that idea, but I also don't have a whole lot to add. I don't really honestly have anything to add to that story. We'll see where it goes. We're working on trying to report some things. We'll see what happens. We'll see if anything comes on or off the mat from the issues and allegations that were raised in that story. But right now, just don't really have anything more to add on that. But again, I didn't feel like we could do this show and not at least address that, even though I know some other platforms have talked about it in more depth and more detail, and you can go find those out. I'm sure if you found this show, you probably already have. So we'll just see how that all plays out. We'll report on it as we are able to and as we have enough information to do it. But yeah, I felt like that was just something we had to kind of get out of the way. And at least address. So stay tuned to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com and also here, wherever you get your audio, YouTube. If we have more to discuss or say about that in the future, we certainly will. The Aaron Brooks thing's a little bit more straightforward. So he had, we had talked in previous episodes here on the YouTube channel and on the podcast feeds about how he was not on the mat, and it wasn't totally clear why that was not the case. Here, according to an interview his dad did with a local newspaper in Maryland, he had suffered through a bout of double pneumonia, which if you've ever had that, it is, I have not, fortunately, but I know people who have, and it is, it doesn't matter.
I went into the hospital with walking pneumonia. I can tell you it is scary. Not only is it like something hard, but like it is a scary thing to have for sure.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter age. Nothing matters really once you get that. Even world-class athlete Aaron Brooks clearly, had a very hard time overcoming it. Reportedly, according to his dad in this story, went and got some stuff. So I'll just read you the quote. Probably easier that way. His father, John Brooks, told the Herald Mall in Maryland that Aaron Brooks had a respiratory infection, thought it was a cold, tried to push through it, ended up being double pneumonia. That kept him in the hospital for 4 days. When he got out, he was looking at the doctor's report and all the things he's lacking in. I'm assuming, his blood work, things like that is what he's getting at here.
Right.
And he said he went to get supplements to replenish whatever it is that needs to be replenished. And one of the things he purchased was right next to the fish oil. It's just a supplement, a natural plant-based supplement. So he picked it up and started taking these things, which apparently caused him to fail a drug test. So the reason we bring this up is obviously once you fail a drug test, there's a process that goes on, and usually a punishment comes with it. As we record this, that decision has not been made, whether he will or will not get one, how long it will be. Obviously, there's an Olympic cycle coming up soon, so the time of any punishment that could be attached to this is very relevant. And there's an appeal process, too, if it ends up being something that him and his camp do not agree with. So we're kind of waiting to see how that plays out. I don't know if he's doing the startup wrestling freestyle league that's going on. I know his name's been mentioned with it. I don't really know how this impacts that, if at all. I just did see as we started recording that Bo Nickel is going to be on their first card, so we'll see how that all shakes out. Interesting, as he goes back and forth between UFC and this new startup league. So interesting there. But as for Aaron Brooks, we're just kind of waiting it out. And I think once the governing body it handles these things, rules and makes a decision, then we'll have more to talk about what it means for his his future international freestyle wrestling career. But if you read the rest of the article, it's over at the Herald Mall. You can find it on our wrestling room and Lions Den message boards at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. But his dad more or less said that, there's different levels of punishment, obviously, right? If you're taking something to try and overcome an illness or something like that versus trying to hide it or do it to mask something or do right. So, and they certainly, as you can imagine with the double pneumonia situation, feel like it's the former of those two situations. So time will tell. If the governing body agrees, the suspension, I would imagine, logic would indicate would be less than what it would be if they determined it was being taken for other reasons. So I don't know how long that investigative process takes to play out. So, we're recording this on July 9th around lunchtime. The way these things typically go, T. Frank, we have a history of this, is we'll talk about something on this when we're recording it, and then by the time we post it, the result happens.
Well, I already know.
So, So keep that in mind. But as of, lunchtime on the 9th, no new news. But whenever it comes out, we'll have it at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. So that's that.
Yeah, but we do have news about Penn State's schedule, which, again, having details like that is gold for the offseason. So we know when Penn State fans can tune in and where. So what is the latest schedule news that Penn State we found out about the 2025-2026 season?
Yeah, so the Big Ten opponents that Penn State will face at home and on the road came out previously, probably about a month ago at this point, and now we have the first non-conference date. So Drexel took to its official website to announce that it would be hosting Penn State for a dual meet on December 5th on its campus in Philadelphia. If you remember, the Dragons came to Rec Hall last year. Penn State beat them in the opening duel of the 2024-2025 season. This one's set for December 5. So what's interesting about that, T. Frank? First, that Penn State's going to Drexel, and they have obviously went on the road to non-conference opponents before. Lehigh was somewhere they wrestled on the road last year at the PPL Center in Allentown, so this isn't new. Drexel, obviously, maybe not on the same level as some other opponents that Penn State is going on the road to face during the non-conference portion of their season, but also it's a chance to wrestle in front of a different part of the fan base who maybe from Philly, Jersey, Delaware, etc., that doesn't have as easy or close access to State College as they do to the Philadelphia area. So I think that's a neat idea. I like it a lot. December 5, I think 7 o'clock is the start time on that, but ticket info and things like that is not yet available from Drexel. But we know Penn State will have the Friday before what will be the Big Ten Championship weekend in the college football world, which of course could involve Penn State. We know that Penn State Wrestling will be on the mat that Friday, taking on Drexel. So interesting to see what else the non-conference scheduling brings for Penn State. I think Kelsey Anderson at one point had talked last year about doing a home and home with Wyoming, who came to Penn State this past season. Is Penn State maybe going there this year? Is that something they're going to save for down the road? So I'm keeping an eye on that. Also curious when Penn State will start its dual meet season, because they have a lot of guys competing in a lot of world tournaments, including the U23s, which is in like mid to late October. And so I'm curious if that will impact the dual meet schedule at all for Penn State, which typically starts in mid-November. I'm going to guess not. I mean, but it could. There's more this year than there have been in years past. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But, I would expect the Army Black Knight invite probably back on the table for Penn State. They've been a pretty regular participant in that. And otherwise, we'll just have to wait and see. These non-conference dates have a way of kind of just trickling out randomly. So, for example, Penn State's not going to announce, I wouldn't assume anyway, history tells us they will not be announcing any of their non-conference dates as one-off news items, but Drexel did. And you can imagine why. The defending champs and multi-time in a row NCAA champs are coming to town. So you want to scream that from the rooftops as soon as you're able to. But Penn State does not necessarily need to do that.
Going to be a big thing for them on this particular matchup.
You got it, yes. No doubt about that.
So let's talk about the upcoming tournaments that you just mentioned, the U23, and of course, Pan Am Championships on the way. So what's out in the horizon for Penn State wrestlers outside of what's going on with the actual team and the schedule and all those things?
Yeah, I wanted to wrap up just sort of recapping where things stand on this front, because we've been back and forth between shows. We did a Final X recap. I can't remember if we did a full U23, U20 recap. Some of that was back earlier in the spring, and I'm sure we did. But just to catch everybody up, the U23 World Team for Team USA is out. All of the Penn State connections who were eligible to take a spot have at this point accepted it. So Luke Littledahl at 57 kilograms, Marcus Blaze to 65 kilograms, PJ Duke at 70 kilograms, Mitchell Messenbrink at 74 kilograms, Levi Haynes at 79 kilograms, Rocco Welch 86, and Josh Barton 92, all currently in T-Frank to compete at U23 Worlds, which is in October. Like I said a little bit ago, it's in late October, so that just made me wonder if anything could change with how Penn State schedules the early portion of its season compared to the way it has in past years. But at the same time, this is not their first rodeo taking guys to this tournament and then having to come home and start the college folk style season. So we'll see. I wouldn't expect any crazy changes, maybe a week or two later. That's October 20th through the 26th in Serbia. So you can see my point there. But also, all these guys wrestling weights they're looking at anyway. So it shouldn't be a big deal either way. Maybe they push it back a week. Probably not. Time will tell. But I just wanted to make that note clear that, Penn State will be well represented on that U23 team, which will compete a little bit later this year. This weekend, though, there's some U20 guys in action. Penn State redshirt freshmen Connor and Cole Mirasola are competing at 92 and 125 kilograms. For Team USA, incoming freshmen wrestling at 79 kilograms. To U20 Pan Am Championships in Peru. They will be on the mat and run that tournament in one day on Saturday, this coming Saturday, so the 12th, I believe it is. And so we'll see how those guys do. Certainly Henkel is an incoming freshman that is lineup blocked at the moment, but curious to see what he does at this event and what he can do at future ones. Certainly a guy that's had freestyle success so far. And then obviously the Mirasolas, we know their story. Cole is in the upper weights for Penn State. Connor looks to be the starting heavyweight for Penn State. So they look to continue their offseason progress as at least Cole anyway prepares for a bigger role with Penn State in 2025, 2026.
Have you learned anything about Cole Mirasola this offseason? Do you feel like you have a better idea of who he might be for Penn State in the lineup this year?
Yeah, I think that he's a guy that is really technically sound. I just wonder, like with any heavyweight, he is wrestling in the 125 kilogram division at this tournament and at other freestyle tournaments he's been at. But oftentimes they do not post the exact weigh-in numbers for these guys, and so that's always the question: is either a freshman or a redshirt freshman competing at heavyweight? How close is he to the weight that guys who have been doing this a long time at the heavheavyweight level are wrestling at? You think back to Greg Kirkvliet, you think of Wyatt Hendrickson, and obviously Gable Stevison. And, where's Cole Mirasola in relation to those guys? I mean, it looks obviously like a fairly big kid, but is he big enough when it comes to that upper echelon of returning heavyweights, which there's a lot of turnover in that weight class. But certainly I think he can compete with anybody in terms of the on-the-mat stuff, but where's he at from a strength, physical perspective? That's always a question with any young heavyweight. And sometimes you can get a sense in these freestyle tournaments, and sometimes you cannot. I haven't got a great one. I think it's going to be on the smaller side. I think that's probably fair to say, but how much so, we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, that's really the big question here moving forward. I guess the other thing is Fargos are going on. Fargo is being wrestled, big tournament, freestyle tournament's been held forever. Very prestigious out in North Dakota this week. I know Sam Herring is there, for Penn State class of 2026 commit. Not sure who else with ties to Penn State is there at the moment. They've been posting state-by-state rosters over on the USA Wrestling website, kind of day by day. It's been a little slow, but that's something we'll keep an eye on this week as well. So always something going on in the midst of what you otherwise would call the offseason, T. Frank, for a sport that competes from November to March. And that's the latest on Penn State Wrestling. And for more, it's over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com.
Yeah, and a great way to keep up with this is subscribe here to the YouTube channel. Of course, follow Greg over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Greg, thanks.
I got one more thing for you then, T. Frank.
All right. Well, what
it's a welcome. It's a welcome. Everyone that was on the Penn State Rivals board and the very part of the very big and successful wrestling room community over there. Welcome over to Blue White Illustrated and the wrestling room. Obviously, hopefully you found this podcast before making the move over. If not, we hope you enjoy it. And we want your feedback, so leave that either in the comments here or over on the message board when we post it there. And we're looking forward as the two communities come together for a lot more wrestling talk here moving forward over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com.
Couldn't say it better myself, so I won't. We'll be back with the next wrestling show. We'll have one or two more, depending on the time of the month. And then, of course, as we get closer to the actual fall, we'll be getting more into the preview. So make sure you check us out here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Talk to you next time.